Hey guys, it's Carl Bond here, and welcome to another Too Much Gain podcast. Got a fun one today, as all these are. We're going to talk about times we've met famous musicians. Now, we've met a lot of famous musicians. This is more about times where something interesting happened and meeting them and stuff like that. So, not all of our meetings with musicians. Oh, before I get into it, too, Plague Rat Products. This is not a sponsored video. They didn't pay for this. This is my best friend's company, my best friend Brian. And he makes these handmade products. So I'm just doing him a solid and advertising his company. So go to see Plague Rat Products. You see a link to it in the description, his Instagram or whatever. He makes all that stuff by hand, like macabre stuff. Check it out if you like that kind of thing. And buy stuff from him. That'd be very, very cool. Anyway, so let's get into the topic. Famous musicians that we have met. We should probably go chronologically or try as best we can.
Yeah, it's kind of.
And we're gonna miss some because this is kind of.
Yeah, we're putting this list together. It's. I mean, we're friends with some famous musicians, but it's.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about people we're actually friends with or became friends with or just hung out with and stuff like that.
This is
like people we met.
And it's really hard. You're like going through. It's like, okay, this happened and this happened. Of course, this. Okay, that, and it's just, there's countless. So we're like, probably some will come to us as we're doing this, but just some interesting interactions with people and like your first time like meeting famous musicians as a musician yourself. It can create for some interesting things.
Yeah.
But I would say probably our very first ones would be way back in the North Carolina. And we played, we played around a lot back in those days, but even before those, I remember, I guess this was before that. So this would have been about 1995 or 96. I'm talking about John Petrucci.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we had John Petrucci we had a friend of ours that, and at this time we were massive Dream Theater fans. I mean, Dream Theater was the band for us at this time. And a friend of ours, he worked at a music store in Charlotte, and Petrucci was doing a clinic there. And we had never seen Dream Theater because they never came to North Carolina or something.
Yeah, they were never a band kind of came through.
So we were able, and he was like, "Hey, you guys can get there early, and you can help us set up for the clinic.
Yeah,
and you'll be able to hang out with John Petrucci." And we're like, "Okay, awesome." So we did. We went down. We helped set up the clinic, set up chairs, set up everything like that.
I helped him the amp that they gave him because he had like a backline like he had to get. Was Reliable Music is what this place was called?
Yeah, I think so. I don't even know if it's there anymore.
And this was in Charlotte, and they had there's like, okay, for him to show up, then they had a backline that was supposed to be there already for him, and one of them was a Boogie combo amp or whatever, and the thing had a blowing tube in it. So
I do not remember this part.
John plugs this thing in and is like, oh jeez, here we go. So I remember having to, and they didn't have any in stock, so he had to go find some. I remember it was like such a deal. So I was kind of helping him like figure that out, and then we were. There's pictures of me on stage with his guitar holding it, and I was helping him set up for this stuff. And there's pictures of me on Instagram. You guys can check it out. And Ted was there too.
I jumped down I was on a drum set on the floor and played Under the Glass Moon intro, and he played it when he was warming up his stuff.
Yeah.
So I got to play with John Petrucci. So
yeah. So anyway, that was fun. But what was interesting is that night we all went out to dinner together.
Yeah, because we helped set it up. They let us go to I guess Ibanez was sponsoring.
Yeah, I was when he was with Ibanez.
And
so Picasso Reject.
Yeah.
Guitar,
so they let us go with all the Ibanez people and John, and we all got to go out to dinner.
There's pictures of that on Instagram too. Follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll throw one of those up. We'll see that.
So that night was funny because John, I don't know if he's had more kids since. I don't know his family history, but his wife was pregnant at the time with twins.
Yeah.
So you're meeting we were huge Dream Theater fans. So you're meeting like a hero of yours, right?
Yeah.
And we were thinking that we're going to be able to like sit there, and we're sitting there sharing like a platter of
like
chicken
we were like
wings
right like he's at the end of the table and we're sitting right here because he got a lot of interest because
so we're trying to ask him questions about music.
Yeah.
And it went into he was asking us questions about being twins, and what they should do and getting things. And it was like we spent an entire hour. We didn't even talk about music or guitar. It was talking about twins because he was like
having twins, and then at the end of the dinner, he was like, "Yeah, but it's like fraternal. It's gonna be one boy and one girl." We're like, well, that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter then. Nobody's gonna see them as being twins when you see them. It's like, you've got a son, you got a daughter, it's done.
Yeah, the problem is separating their identities.
That's we're telling him about. You shouldn't dress them alike and all that stuff. And he didn't let it out till the very end of the conversation. They're not identical. I'm like, well, doesn't matter. It's a whole different experience.
You just have 2 kids now. That's all.
But that was cool. He was really cool, and he was like, he
was a really cool guy.
Yeah, and he had that huge life event getting ready to happen. I don't know if he's got more kids since, but I guess those kids are probably almost 30 now, which is crazy.
That's nuts. And then we had one. So this is back in the day. Devin Townsend is a huge name now in the rock metal world.
By the way, we helped John the next day too in Winston-Salem.
Yeah,
that was Winston-Salem. Yep, and his clinic in Winston-Salem.
So we were at this was 95, 96 area, and we were huge into Devin Townsend. Now this was back when Devin Townsend, because he had been the singer on Steve Vai's Sex and Religion album.
So we knew who he was from that.
So we knew who he was. Yeah, we knew who he was from that. And we had this CD store in town that you could go listen to like underground CDs, and you could kind of like
test listening bars,
like a listening bar. So we discovered Devin Townsend, and at that time he was doing Strapping Young Lad. This was right after the City album had come out, which we loved.
I remember sitting listening to a stack of CDs, and you had to say, we would do this like once a week. We'd go in there and just find new bands we hadn't heard and sit down and listen. And you were at a little listening booth, and I was at a listening booth. And you had the Strapping Young Lad City thing. And so you're listening to this, and I'm listening to my music, and you're looking at me. Your eyes are just big as saucers.
All Hail the New Flesh.
And you're like, hear this album.
You guys have not heard that album.
City by Strapping Young Lad.
All Hail the New Flesh, I think, is the best metal song ever written in history. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but it's a brilliant track. I love that track.
It's such a great album.
So anyway, so we were really into Devin Townsend.
We got into him then. Then he became our like. This guy is.
So you start researching things. This is sort of the early days of the internet. Jesus, this is a long time ago. But you would have to, through mail order his music. And at that time, so I guess we sort of got his like newsletter, and his wife, Tracy, would ship you the CDs and send you
send you Christmas cards.
They'd send you Christmas cards like every year, and Devin would sign it,
and she would sign it.
So you basically had to get his music, and we bought his album Ocean Machine, and
we knew all about it. So
we knew so we knew all about Ocean Machine.
So we met him at a Strapping Young Lad show when he was opening for
Testament and Stuck Mojo. Okay. It was Testament and Stuck Mojo and Strapping Young Lad, and he was opening the show.
Yeah, they were opening the show. So Strapping
Gene Hoglan was his drummer.
So I remember them meeting, and then we're at the show, and I remember him like, God, there's like 3 guys in here that know every note of my music, and nobody else.
We were so into it. Yeah.
We were freaking out. Then after the show, in the parking lot, we talked to him for like half an hour, and he was like, cool. And back then, you could get him to like produce your.
He had just produced.
Stuck Mojo Pig Walk, which is an awesome album by Stuck Mojo. Yeah. Talk about killer riffs. Rich Ward, the Duke of Metal. He can write some riffs. Anyway, that's a great album. If you haven't heard that, check out that. But anyway, we wanted him to produce ours, so we were actually talking to him about that and stuff like that. But we asked him about Ocean Machine. Now, people know Ocean Machine well now if you're a Devin Townsend fan. It's like one of his legendary albums. It was not out yet, and he just perked up. He couldn't believe that somebody knew about Ocean Machine. But we were like researching the underground. We knew everything about this guy. So it was...
we're just out there in the parking lot, and so we got to talk to him for like 30 minutes. And I remember they were having an issue. Like the club owner wasn't paying them the amount of money that they were guaranteed.
Something was going on. I'm not sure.
So he was like gathering the band to go confront the club owner and get their money. And this is what was happening that night. It was like pretty funny.
I remember we saw them like 2 nights later too.
in Winston, and they were like, "You guys are
we
back."
came running into the show, and I remember Devin, and you can hear him like warming up off backstage in that little trailer or whatever, and then he came out and he saw us, and we were right in front, and he's like, "Oh, thank God, somebody here knows this. I know somebody's gonna know my music."
Yeah, and he's just grown through the decades.
I know, it's funny now. He's like just a metal legend, but this is like when he was like fresh off of Steve Vai and just doing his own thing, and he was some of that stuff was very. And he just did so much great music back then.
Yeah, and so we met a lot of like the guys in Typo Negative, and we were in those days we had like black hair to our ass. That was our scene, and so we got to meet a lot of cool music, but it was like a lot of stuff that was more in passing or and stuff like that. But I remember there's this one incident. Once we got out to LA, both of us, so what you do as the musician is sort of a rite of passage that moves to Los Angeles. What do you do?
Well, we always taught. I started teaching guitar when I was like 17, so that's the only job I had ever had. But when we moved to LA when we were like 24,
we don't have jobs.
We don't have any students. You have no student. Nobody knows who you are out here. So we had to go get a job at Guitar Center in Sherman Oaks.
So we did that. So and then if you're working at a
for like 6 months,
until we got our students up. So if you're working at Guitar Centers, like two big guitar centers out in LA, it's going to be the Hollywood one and the Sherman Oaks one, where you're going to have a lot of the run-ins and
celebrity.
This didn't happen to me, but like I worked in the drum department, so the entire upstairs area was the drum department, and they had you could see it all the time. Like a really famous person, like musician, would come upstairs, walk in with one of the managers or whatever, and they would be going to this little adjacent room that's like beside the drum department, and that's where they're working their pro
the A&R room.
Yeah, they're working their pro deals and stuff like that. So anyway, like a week before we got there,
it's basically a way for there's an A&R guy, because in those areas, and when somebody famous walks in, it happens a lot. So they have a guy that's exclusively, if something happens like that, usually the person's getting the gear for free, and they already have deals with these companies. They just need it very quickly and immediately. Yeah. So they come in and they get the gear, and so they basically take him into this room to run this transaction and get everything okay through the company
and keep him away from the people.
So they had that in the Hollywood store and the Sherman Oaks store.
Yeah. So we had this. So this I guess is one we actually didn't meet. I would love to meet him, but this was around Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. And
so this happened. We didn't work there yet. We got a job there, and this story, while we were sitting there doing our orientation, the guy who actually the A&R guy was there with us and talking to us, and he told us the story. It had just happened like 4 or 5 days before.
Yeah. So anyway, Brian Wilson had been taken into this little side.
Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys.
And he's gone into this little back room, and they're doing it. And so he was looking for like a
bass.
A bass?
Yeah, it was. I think it was some sort of a bass or some type of maybe it was like a hollow like acoustic. But I don't know what it. I remember it was maybe not like a straight. He did need a Fender P or something like that. There was something else.
Yeah, he needed something. So they needed to you go call all the other Guitar Centers and you figure out the store that's got it.
Yeah. So anyway, Brian essentially is in this office, and there's a bass sitting in there against the wall. Like there's a lot of gear. There's gear all over the place. Yeah. So the bass sitting against the wall, and he picks up this bass guitar. So the guy who's telling us the story, he said, so I had to call in to other stores to try to figure out on like speakerphone. He's got almost speakerphone, trying to find stores who have this piece of gear that Brian needs.
Well, he found the one. He had called the one. He was like, "You got this gear," and he had it.
Yeah.
He just did it on speakerphone.
So Brian Wilson
is in the background.
Sitting beside the guy in a chair. He picks up a bass and he's like humming. He starts singing Beach Boys songs, right? And thumping a little bass and just kind of half singing these Beach Boys songs and stuff like that. And the guy who was telling us the story is like, I'm freaking out, man. Yeah. I'm Brian Wilson that's sitting here, who's the greatest music legend almost of all time. And he's singing classic Beach Boys songs to me, and it's me and him in the room by myself, and I'm on speakerphone with this guy who's trying to locate this instrument that he wants. And the guy goes, "Who the hell is that butchering the Beach Boys?" over the intercom.
So he like slams the cord to hang up the phone.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do?
And it's like, how do you play it? I guess it was like my greatest moment of my life went to my biggest horror story of my life. And this guy from the store, like Bakersfield, just it slams
Yeah.
Brian Wilson.
And he's like, I called it back. It's like, dude, that was Brian Wilson, you idiot.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? But it was like insane. But I'd say it was D-Day or the first day or the second day that we worked at Guitar Center. Stevie Wonder came in the store.
Oh, yeah.
And Stevie Wonder was the sweetest guy. He made sure that he shook everyone's hand in the store that worked there in the store before he left.
And not just the keyboard section where he ended up
like
going the pro audio section. He was like, he wanted to shake the drum guy's hands.
Yeah.
That was just his thing. He just came in there and I don't know, maybe it's his way of just disarming people and just like,
he was just such a nice guy.
Just such a nice guy. He just makes people feel comfortable. And he's like, can I shake everybody's hand before I don't want to do business or anything. I just want to shake everybody's hand.
So we're like coming down from the drum department and go shake Stevie
working
Wonder's
there
hand.
like second or third
Yeah,
day.
we were like,
I'm still walking behind like my trainee every day, just like he's teaching me the ropes. And and I get to shake Stevie Wonder's hand. I'm like, okay, this is different than North Carolina.
And he was like a really cool, but most people are really cool, especially like the musicians that were in there. But I would say that like hands down, the ones that were just absolute jerks were like comedians, like really famous comedians.
Almost every comedian that walked in there was an absolute jerk.
Yeah, or they're like really dark and they're just like, they
or
feel
just
like so entitled.
Yeah,
it's just like
straight up. I mean,
the only one that was really cool was Sinbad.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah,
Sinbad. If you ever want to know what Sinbad is like in real person, Sinbad acts like Sinbad. That's exactly how he is in person when you meet him.
I mean, that's the thing about Guitar Center. It's not only musicians that walk in there. There was like, you'd get actors and actresses and stuff.
I remember you met Olivia Diabo.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you guys know who Olivia Diabo is. She was on the Wonder Years. She's on a bunch of other stuff like back in the 80s and stuff like that. She's hot though, right?
Yeah.
And I always watched the Wonder Years, and she came in, and I'm like, by that time I was like 25, and I was like,
who's the kid on Malcolm in the Middle? Remember
Frankie
he came in there?
Muniz.
Yeah, I mean, he's a drummer. He's like a professional drummer now. That's what he does. I used to meet him all the time.
He did races cars and stuff too, right?
Yeah, he was really cool. And this was in the height of his show.
Height of his, I remember that. But he, what were we talking about? Oh, Olivia Dopp. So she came in, I guess she had a friend that she was buying like a birthday or Christmas gift for, and she wanted like a book, something to, what's a good book to give him? And so I was trying to help her, but at the same time, not act like I know who she is, because she's not like this major actress. So she probably assumes that most people don't know who she is, and I did, because I've always thought she was hot, and I watched the Wonder Years and stuff. And then I'm doing this entire thing for like half an hour. I'm walking around this store and doing all this thing, and I remember when she finally was checking, I forget what she bought, but she was buying this gift. She came up and she was buying it. And, when you're filling out the receipt, you're supposed to ask people the name, but I went ahead and started filling out her name, and even with the apostrophe and all that stuff on it, I just sold myself out right at the end. I'm like, it's like Olivia, the Diabo is a little apostrophe.
Yeah.
And
like, what's your number?
No. So that's another thing, is that Guitar Center makes you, because you guys get this. For many company now, it's like their thing. You can buy a pack of guitar picks from Sweetwater, and you've got to get a telephone call 2 days later to see how those picks are doing. I'm like, do we really have to go through this?
You would get in trouble if you didn't get numbers.
Yeah, so Guitar Center, I think, started that, because Guitar Center had this whole thing. You had every day, any sales that you had done like the previous week were there, and if you had not called them and you couldn't mark it off the computer, they could see how many were still active. You had to call these people and make sure they're purchased. So you had to basically get their number while they were checking out. And I'm like, I am not going to ask Olivia Diabo for her phone number. She's going to think, I already know, just displayed that I knew exactly who she was the entire time while I was talking to her. And now I'm going to ask her for her number. No. That's not going to happen. So,
but at that same time, like somebody who's not a musician, but his daughter is, Emilio Estevez was in there. Yeah. And so he was downstairs, and Carl worked in guitar and I worked in drums. So I'm upstairs, Carl's downstairs. We basically worked about at the same time, like every time too. Yeah. So Emilio Estevez is downstairs, and then you're getting some like people telling like Emilio Estevez is here or something like that. But so he was downstairs for a bit, and he starts walking up the stairs,
we're huge Night of the Roxbury fans. Back in the day, we watched that movie a ton.
So he gets to the top of he's walking up the stairs, but he had just left the guitar section.
There's an intercom system.
So there's an intercom. Was it who was that, you or something?
Yeah.
So Carl gets on the intercom to just
it goes across the whole store.
He's sending out. Yeah, it goes through the phones that are in each department. And he
I waited till he was going into Ted's section.
Yeah, so he waited till he's like going upstairs where he's not in any section.
Because I wanted to announce him to Ted, pretty much, because Ted's up there.
Well, so he didn't want him to hear it, but he sits there and gets on the intercom and goes, Emilio! And he's literally walking right into the drum department.
Right in front of Ted.
And I'm just
coming out of this phone.
I just picked up the phone and just slammed it down to get the intercom to shut up. And I was like, oh, man. And he has a daughter that's a drummer. I think she's a professional drummer now. And so I remember having to deal with them, and I worked with them, and I sold them some stuff, and having to get, he's like, can I get a name? Can I get your number? And I'm not even gonna. I'm not gonna.
You can't ask
for his number.
Ridiculous.
It's kind of crazy. But outside of that, a lot of these are. If you work at a Guitar Center in Los Angeles, you're gonna get.
Oh yeah, there's other things like things that wouldn't even happen. Like I didn't even meet him. I didn't talk to him. I remember Richie Kotzen came in there, and he, he's not like a super famous guitar player that like if you're not like a serious guitar player, you probably don't know who he is, right? But all the guys that worked there knew who he was, right? So he comes in and he's holding a dog. He's holding like a little Chihuahua. But of course you're going in as, oh cool, we get to watch Richie kind of test out some guitars. This is gonna be cool. And he never put his dog down. He just held his dog. He pointed at a guitar he wanted, and they wrapped it up for him. And he walked out. He never put his dog. I was never gonna see him play, but that's what I remember him. Yeah. And there was other thing with like, obviously Eddie Van Halen came in. Eddie lived like a mile from the store, so he was down there a lot usually with Wolf.
Yeah. And at those days, Wolfie was. Just a drummer.
Yeah.
And those, I guess.
But I have a whole video. If you look up a video called My Memories of Eddie Van Halen, that's all of my interactions pretty much of Eddie Van Halen at Guitar Center and Ralph's grocery store.
Yeah.
We had no, you had.
Yeah, so Wolfie was a drummer. I remember they came up one day and we got these new, like, really interesting little practice pads in, and I actually took one, and I convinced. I was like showing it to them, and they were like, "Oh, that's really cool." So I remember that he bought one with Wolfie, and you sit there and talk to him for like 10 minutes, and then they bought a few other things or whatever, and you're on such a high because you're talking to Eddie Van Halen, and then I had to go immediately. I went to lunch, and I went to a local Subway, and I'm just sitting there eating.
A block away.
Yeah, like a block away, and you're kind of coming down like, man, I just met Eddie Van Halen. I got to talk to him for like 10 minutes. And Eddie Van Halen and Wolf walk in, and Wolf like points at me like, "Oh, that's the guy from the store." And Eddie goes, "You following us?" Like in a jokey way, but I just froze. I just didn't even say anything. I'm like, "Oh," I just wound down from hanging out with him, and then just was not prepared for yet another interaction.
Yeah.
A couple minutes later. So that was an interesting one. And you used to always have issues like CC DeVille, Poison. He would come in there. I remember I've seen CC come in there all the time.
Yeah.
And he was CC is a really like a fun guy. I mean, he acts like CC DeVille.
Yeah, he's got kind of like he's kind of a, I don't know, say, I'm like, he's really nice, but he's kind of a forceful personality. Right?
Yeah, he's intense.
He's there.
Yeah.
And he's this little guy. He's like 4'5". I mean, he's not that short. Maybe he is. I don't know. He wears these platform shoes, and he's still like barely breaking 5 feet. But he has this rough voice. He has a really crazy voice. But he's like a pretty good like vintage amp connoisseur. And we had all this used stuff. And I remember one time he freaked out about this old Marshall combo that was in there, and he was like, "This is a great amp," and he was like talking, and he made me assure, he's like, "Whoever gets this, make sure they realize how great this amp is." He was like, it's like personal to him. It was like really cool. But he was like a fun guy. Yeah, I mean, I see him like a few times, and he was, he was a small guy, so he'd hide behind a stack of amp, probably a half stack. and he'd jump out and he'd like that, and he'd do little things like fun things like that. But and he was a fun nice guy that was always in there. But he's like he lets you know that he's in there when was one of the personalities. He's like kind of full of life, and he was like always fun when he was in there.
Serge, the lead singer of System of a Down, coming in
you
there,
met him,
and this was the very beginning. I mean, System of a Down they were in the big, I think probably just an album or two in or whatever, and he was getting like this little vintage. He was looking for something to buy for his drummer just for Christmas or something.
Yeah.
And
I remember you thinking that was like the nicest. Like,
yeah, I just remember I going like, God, that guy was so nice, man. He was like just trying to find something to get for his drummer, and he was just like really cool and just really like everyone. He was just like you know, and someone who's at that stage of the career, you start getting all cocky, but he was just so nice, man. He was just a really really cool guy. Yeah, but that, and then I remember Ahmet Zappa. You guys know Frank Zappa and Ahmet. Remember, you got Dweezil and Ahmet, and then they have their own show for a while. So they were they had I guess it was where the Zappa studio was not far from there as well, and they were trying to get, which I really wasn't supposed to be doing. They were kidding, like they have the old Roland V drum kits. And you could get, a lot of different kit sounds. And he would like call up and he would come and he'd be like, hey man, can you like hook me up and, bring like the little card and just download some of the sounds and like, so you can have some of the sounds. I believe that's kind of like what we were doing. And I was like, yeah, whatever, they had bought the drums and I remember him taking it. I remember I was sitting there loading and there was like a Jerry Seinfeld commercial on at the time where he's just, it was like an American Express commercial, and he was just kind of just sitting there pumping gas, and he just looks at the person pumping gas side and goes, so you like jazz?
Yeah, I remember that.
Like that, and it's just to be just awkward, right?
Yeah. So you like jazz?
So I don't know why I thought that he would have seen this commercial. So I'm sitting there loading this in, and where it's like, loading sounds into his little card.
It takes forever.
Yeah, and we're both standing there, and it's all up, and I'm like, so you like jazz? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, I got know anything about jazz. I don't know anything about jazz. It was just a joke. And he was like,
I know
what?
absolutely nothing about jazz.
It was awkward. I was like, okay, that
we're going to talk about it for 30 minutes?
Yeah, talk about awkward. Talk about the Nelson twins. Like,
the Nelson. Well, one of them came in, and I don't know which one it was. Here we go. I'm a twin. You're supposed to check these things out. But man, I don't know which one it was, but he was the nicest guy. He was in there selling I think he was selling like this old Gibson acoustic or whatever. I don't know, trading it or something. But man, he was like the nicest guy.
Yeah.
We started talking to him. I told him, I'm a twin. I got a twin upstairs. And he's like, man, that's cool. So he would sit there talking to us, and he started talking about his whole like family, his dad. He started talking about it. He went to his car. Now, well, first of all, I thought he was just leaving. He's like, man, it was really good talking to you. And so he leaves. And he's gone for like 5 minutes. And he comes back in the store, and he's got like a stack of CDs. And it's all the music
it's all Metallica albums. It's post-Black Album Metallica albums.
Yeah. So no, he's like, because I told him, I was like, I'm just familiar with the stuff you did back like the After the Rain. That's all I know.
There's cool songs in it.
Love and Affection. That's all I know. that era. And so he brought it all the CD, everything they had done since. I think they had just done an album of their dad's music.
Yeah.
And
the whole tours with that.
Yeah. And so he brought me all these CDs out of his car. He like went in his car and collected them and came over. And he was just you meet some like really nice people.
So you met Babyface as well.
That was funny. So Babyface didn't play guitar. He came in here. Obviously he knew who Babyface was, whatever. So he comes in there, and it was kind of a funny story because it was the first time I'd ever seen one of those black American Express cards.
Yeah.
They were like,
it comes in an armored truck or something.
Yeah. It's something like you can't even have this card unless you spend $100,000 a month on it or something like that. And it feels is like made of like stone or I don't know what it is. So he just came in and he didn't play. He just pointed to a guitar, one of the high-end guitars over my head, like behind the counter, and he's like, I'm going to grab that. And I was like, all right. And so I get him this guitar, and then I remember him handing me this card, right? And I'm like, because you got to go through all these like security processes and stuff like that, and like some cards. This card, I don't know why I have the impression. Before I just got near the machine with it, I think. And the whole thing just lit up approved.
Approved.
Approved. I didn't even have to swipe it. This is before tap stuff. I mean, literally, this card is like, I think it's encrusted with diamonds or something. This is like this is the credit card you can like buy planes with.
Yeah.
and it was, I just thought that was interesting. I remember it was like, I'm pretty sure this one's going to go through. Click when we were doing the credit card.
So there's countless stories that
Billy Sheehan was also a really good one too. Because Billy Sheehan wanted one of those Dan Electro, I think it was a baritone or a 12-string.
He was in there a fair amount, I remember.
So he called up and he's like, Billy Sheehan. And I was like, he's like,
is that how he did? Is that how he just
Billy Sheehan,
Billy Sheehan,
Billy Sheehan, whatever. So he's like,
who am I talking to?
So it was kind of funny because you're supposed to like TO the guys to the A&R people if they're like known or whatever. So he comes in. No, wait. So he calls first and he's like, I want to trade in this thing that I just got for like one of those Dan Electro, or maybe vice versa. No, I think he wanted the Dan Electro guitar. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll make that happen when you come in. He's like, cool, what's your name? And I was like, it's Carl. And he's like, all right. So like 20 minutes later, Billy Sheehan walks in the store. He's like, I'm looking for Carl. I'm like, and he comes over there, and I have no
little Conor McGregor walk over.
Yeah,
right here, man.
And I have no authority to approve this transaction. By the way, I don't. This is a guitar he's been using forever, and he just wants to come in and trade it for something else. That's not kosher. He can't do that. But I was like, yeah, I'll make it work. And then the A&R guy sees him there, and then comes down and starts saying, Billy, come work with me. He's kind of still with. But Billy was sitting there talking to me, and he had like this new pick, one of those like stone, like those picks that cost like $55. He was like, you should check it. I was like, a Red Bear ones. He's like, here, check this out. And he was like, let me play. He's like, isn't this really great? He was like the nicest guy. I just thought it was really cool that Billy Sheehan would walk in the store and goes, I'm looking for Carl. I'm like, I have no authority. I can't do this. The thing that I promised you on the phone. I cannot do it.
I have no clue.
I have no clue what I'm doing here.
Well, yeah, so there was tons of, like I said, you have countless, being in the industry, being out here for all these years, you have countless run-ins, but some of them have some little funny things about them, and some of them you just see in passing, and they kind of leave a little memory on you. Some more involved, like Petrucci, actually having dinner with him and everything. But those were cool memories.
Anyway, tell me you guys stories when famous good
or bad,
or bad interactions you've had with your people. I mean, we weren't actually huge fans with a lot of these people. I mean, I'm fans of a lot, I guess, some of them, but some of them I don't listen to Babyface's music, but I knew who he was, and it was an interesting interaction. Yeah. But it's kind of one of those things where it's so it doesn't have to be somebody you totally fan of. It's just somebody you met and you thought was a cool interaction. Anyway,
all right, cool.
We're done today. We will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.